You'll know you've finally changed when she starts to notice, but too late. When the version of you she used to take for granted becomes the man she always wanted, but can no longer have. There was a time when you would have done anything just to keep her. You remember it, don't you? How every part of your day revolved around her name, her message tone, her silence, her moods. You didn't even realize it back then, but you built your world around someone who never promised to stay. You told yourself it was love, that being available, being kind, being loyal was enough to make her see your worth. You thought the more you gave, the more she'd appreciate it. But that's not what happened, is it? Because the truth is, the version she knew, the man she met back then, wasn't grounded. He was giving from emptiness. He was loving from fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of being alone. Fear that if he didn't keep proving himself, he'd be forgotten. You answered texts too quickly. You apologized even when you weren't wrong. You tolerated inconsistency because you believed love meant endurance. You mistook attachment for connection. And you kept telling yourself, if I just love harder, she'll understand. But she didn't, because she couldn't. See, when a man hasn't yet learned to value himself, he'll hand over his peace, his focus, his confidence, just to keep someone who's already slipping away. He'll abandon his own purpose in exchange for temporary affection. That was you once. The man who waited by his phone, who replayed old conversations at midnight, wondering where he went wrong. You were sincere, but you were lost. You were good-hearted, but unbalanced. And the world, especially relationships, rarely reward a man who hasn't learned his own value. You thought being nice was the answer, that empathy and loyalty were enough to build a connection that would last. But what you didn't see was how much of yourself you were slowly erasing. You gave up your time for her convenience. You changed your plans to match hers. You silenced your thoughts just to avoid tension. You tried to fit into the version of you she preferred, instead of standing as the man you were meant to become. And she liked it at first. She liked being adored, being prioritized. But soon, she got used to it. Your effort became her expectation. Your love became routine. And the man who once felt like a prize began to feel like an option. You see, she didn't leave because you weren't good enough. She left because you stopped being a challenge. You stopped being mysterious. You stopped being you. She met you when you still had confidence, ambition, curiosity. But somewhere along the way, you made her your world, and she lost interest in exploring it. It's a painful truth that most men only understand after heartbreak. Love doesn't thrive in desperation. It thrives in self-respect. And back then, you didn't have that yet. You were all heart, no boundary, all emotion, no direction. And she saw that. Maybe she didn't mean to take advantage of it, but she did. Because when someone gives endlessly, the other person forgets it's a gift. You started shrinking, becoming quieter, softer, less ambitious. You thought it made you more lovable. But all it did was make you forgettable. That version of you, the one who sought validation in her replies, who built his identity around her presence, he meant well. He truly did. But he didn't yet understand what kind of man he was supposed to be. He thought love was something you earned, when in reality, real love is something you attract, when you already know your worth. She didn't fall for you because you gave everything. She fell for the spark you had before you started giving too much, before the overthinking, before the need to please, before the constant "are you okay" messages. That version, the old you, was built on hope, not foundation. You believed that if you could just make her happy, she'd stay. But people don't stay for comfort. They stay for connection, for energy, for strength. And in trying to make her your purpose, you forgot your own. But here's the part that stings the most. You thought losing her would break you. You thought the world would end the moment she stopped calling, the moment she moved on. But what you didn't know then is that her leaving wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something else, something greater. Because that version of you, the man she knew, he had to die for the real one to be born. The one who doesn't chase. The one who doesn't beg. The one who looks in the mirror and finally sees himself, not through her eyes, but through his own. That version she knew, he was necessary. He was your lesson, your mirror, your first draft. And though it hurts to admit it, she'll never meet the man you're about to become. At first, you didn't even realize it was ending. You thought it was just a phase, that she just needed space, that if you waited long enough, things would return to how they used to be. You told yourself she was tired, busy, distracted. You made excuses for her silence. You replayed every conversation, trying to find the moment it shifted. The message she didn't reply to. The tone that suddenly went cold. The plans that stopped happening. And the thing about heartbreak is that it never ends all at once. It fades slowly, like a song you love that keeps playing in the background. But the lyrics don't sound the same anymore. You start noticing small things. She doesn't laugh the way she used to. She texts back hours later, or not at all. And you tell yourself not to overthink, but deep down, you already know. The distance is growing, not just in time, but in energy. She's still there, but her heart isn't. And you can feel it. You can feel her slipping through your fingers while you pretend not to notice. Because admitting it would mean it's real, and you weren't ready for that yet. So you kept showing up. You tried harder. You thought maybe if you just reminded her of who you were, the memories, the laughter, the things you shared, she'd remember too, but she didn't. And that's the thing about people who are already halfway out the door. No amount of love can make them turn back. The calls became shorter, the words became fewer, and the silence became louder than anything you could have said. You started to feel the imbalance. You cared more, you reached out more, you loved harder. But it all went one way. And then it happened. The break. Not an explosion, not a dramatic ending, just a quiet realization that she was gone, even while she was still standing right in front of you. She said she needed time, or maybe she said nothing at all, just disappeared behind the wall of her own confusion. And you, the man who once gave everything, were left with nothing but questions. Questions that would echo in your mind every night. What did I do wrong? Wasn't I enough? Why didn't she fight for me? You searched for answers that didn't exist, because sometimes there is no reason. People change, feelings fade, and love, no matter how pure, doesn't always survive timing. But the break, it did something to you. It stripped you down to your core. It forced you to see yourself without her reflection. For a while, you tried to fill the silence. You scrolled through old photos, reread messages, listened to songs that reminded you of her. You told yourself it was just grief, that it would pass. But it wasn't just about losing her. It was about losing the version of yourself that existed only when she was around. And that's the part no one talks about. The quiet after she leaves. The hollow feeling that settles in your chest when you realize you don't even know who you are without her. You try distractions, gym sessions that feel empty, nights out that feel forced, conversations that never hit the same. You laugh, but it's not real. You move on, but you don't heal. Because before a man truly heals, he has to sit in the silence. He has to let the pain do its work. He has to stop running from the ache and learn to listen to it. You see, the break wasn't just between you and her. It was between you and the man you thought you had to be to keep her. That man, the one who chased, who begged, who couldn't let go, he needed to fall apart. He needed to shatter, so something new could rise in his place. You'll remember the night it finally hit you, the night you stopped waiting for her text, the night you realized she wasn't coming back. There were no tears left, just a strange calm, the kind that comes when you've accepted that something is truly over. It didn't mean you stopped caring. It meant you stopped fighting what was already gone. And for the first time in months, you looked in the mirror and didn't see heartbreak. You saw a man, broken, yes, but breathing, standing, present. The break was cruel, but it was honest. It showed you what happens when love isn't matched, when effort isn't returned, when a man gives himself away without boundaries. But it also gave you something she never could: clarity. Because through all the pain, through all the confusion, you started to see what needed to change. Not her, not the circumstances, you. The break taught you that peace doesn't come from someone staying. It comes from learning you'll be okay when they leave. And that realization, that small, quiet truth, was the beginning of your transformation. She may have broken your heart, but the break, that's what built your foundation. Something shifts after the pain, not all at once, not like a switch being flipped. It happens quietly, in the stillness of your mornings, in the way you start to move again after being frozen for so long. At first, you don't even notice it. You just wake up one day, and the weight on your chest feels lighter. You still think about her sometimes, but the thoughts don't sting like they used to. They pass through you, like wind through an open window. That's when it begins. The rebuilding, the becoming. It doesn't start with grand gestures or some cinematic moment of clarity. It starts with small things. You go to the gym, not to impress her, but because you need to feel strong again. You clean your space. You cut your hair. You start reading, walking, breathing deeper. You start doing the things you neglected, the ones that make you feel alive. And somewhere along the way, you realize you've stopped waiting. You've stopped checking your phone, stopped hoping for her to notice your growth, stopped wondering if she regrets it. Because your focus is no longer on what left, it's on what's being built. You start to feel your confidence return, not the kind that comes from validation, but the kind that comes from discipline, from knowing you can trust yourself again. There's something powerful about a man who's been broken, and then rebuilt himself with his own hands. He carries a calm that can't be faked, a strength that doesn't need to be proven. You stop trying to convince people to see your worth, because you finally see it yourself. You stop chasing what doesn't choose you, because peace has become more valuable than attention. You start walking differently. Your posture changes. Your eyes no longer search for reassurance. You move with quiet certainty, like a man who knows who he is and where he's going. And that's when life starts to mirror your growth. Opportunities appear. People treat you differently. Not because you became someone new, but because you finally started acting like the man you were meant to be. You start to notice the difference between love that drains you and love that inspires you. You stop romanticizing inconsistency. You stop begging for closure. You realize the past no longer deserves the same energy you once gave it. You've learned to enjoy your own company. The silence that used to haunt you now feels like peace. You fill it with music, with thought, with purpose. You're not running from loneliness anymore. You're embracing solitude. Because solitude is where men rebuild. It's where focus sharpens. It's where pain turns into power. And as the weeks pass, you start to see glimpses of the man you were always supposed to be. You're no longer reactive. You're intentional. You no longer chase highs. You build stability. You no longer beg for love. You embody it. The version of you that once broke down is gone, but not forgotten. He's the foundation beneath this new strength. He's the reason you learn to value your energy, your time, your peace. You start setting boundaries, not walls, but standards. You no longer tolerate disrespect disguised as love. You no longer lower your voice just to keep someone comfortable. You begin to understand that growth isn't about becoming colder. It's about becoming clearer. You start showing up for yourself in ways you never did before. You work harder, sleep better, eat cleaner, move intentionally. Not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you finally believe you deserve better. You see, the man you're becoming doesn't need to announce himself. He's too busy doing the work. He's too focused on purpose, on progress, on peace. And one day, you'll look around and realize how far you've come. You'll realize you don't crave her attention anymore. You don't replay her words. You don't ache for her presence. Because you've built something she never could give you, self-respect. That's when you'll start to see her differently too. Not as the one who broke you, but as the one who pushed you toward evolution. You'll understand that she was never the destination. She was the lesson, the catalyst, the fire that forged you. And maybe she'll see it too, the change in your eyes, the calm in your voice, the silence that doesn't beg. But by then, you won't be seeking her validation. You'll be too busy living, creating, thriving. The man you've become doesn't need to be missed. He's already found. He's the man who walks with purpose, who speaks with intention, who doesn't chase what leaves, because he knows what stays will never need to be chased. And that's when you'll finally understand. This was never about her missing you. It was about you remembering yourself. It never happens the way you imagine. There's no dramatic confession, no tears under streetlights, no sudden, "I miss you" text that fixes everything. It's quieter than that, almost accidental. Maybe she's scrolling one evening and your name appears on her screen, a photo of you laughing with friends. You look different, not just better, different. There's a steadiness in your eyes now, a peace she doesn't recognize. Or maybe she sees you in passing, at the gym, at a cafe, somewhere ordinary, and for a second she freezes, because the man standing there doesn't move like the one she left. He's taller somehow, not in height, but in presence. His energy no longer reaches for approval. It simply is. She glances again, expecting the old warmth in your eyes, the eagerness that used to greet her every time. But it's gone. What replaces it isn't anger or indifference, it's calm. And that calm unsettles her more than any bitterness ever could. Because once upon a time, she was the source of your chaos. Now you're a storm she can't enter. You talk differently, too. When you speak, your words have weight. You're not trying to impress, you're just present. Every movement, every silence feels deliberate. And she feels it, the distance between who you were and who you've become. She can't quite explain it, but something inside her whispers, "He's not mine anymore." She tells herself she's happy for you, that she's moved on. But deep down, there's a flicker of something she can't ignore. It's not jealousy, it's recognition. Recognition of the man she always wanted you to be, the one you finally became, just without her. She replays memories, tiny flashes of laughter, the late-night calls, the comfort of your presence. And suddenly, she remembers how safe it felt, how genuine your heart was, how she thought she could always come back. But when she looks at you now, she realizes that door isn't open anymore. You've outgrown it, not out of spite, out of evolution. And the irony hits her. The very distance she once needed is what made you unreturnable. You notice her, of course. You're human. You feel the moment her eyes find you. But something inside you stays still. You don't rush, you don't perform. You don't seek what you've already healed from. Because now you understand that closure isn't a conversation, it's a choice. And you made it a long time ago. You might exchange a polite nod, maybe a smile. But the energy between you has changed forever. There's no tension, no resentment, just quiet acknowledgement of two paths that no longer cross. And while she might miss you, she doesn't miss you, the person you were. She misses the safety of knowing someone loved her without limits. She misses the simplicity of being adored. She misses the man who waited. But that man is gone. He had to be. Because the man she sees now doesn't wait. He decides. He doesn't chase. He attracts. He doesn't beg for love. He builds it within himself. You've learned that peace is more valuable than nostalgia. That not every connection deserves a reunion. That some people were meant to teach you what not to repeat. And though a part of you might still remember her voice, the way she laughed, the way her hand fit into yours, you no longer need to relive it. You've honored it, learned from it, released it. What she feels now is not yours to carry. What you carry now is not hers to touch. This moment, the one where she finally notices, isn't about revenge or validation. It's about reflection. It's about witnessing the full circle of growth, how losing something once sacred led you back to yourself. She'll think about texting you. She'll type and erase. She'll wonder what she'd even say, because deep down, she knows. The conversation she wants isn't possible anymore. The version of you who needed her no longer exists. And that's when the truth lands hardest. She didn't lose you when she walked away. She lost you when you healed. She'll carry that realization quietly, in passing thoughts, in late-night memories, in moments of solitude. Not as regret, maybe, but as understanding. Meanwhile, you'll keep moving forward, not because you're running from the past, but because you finally have a future to walk toward. You'll smile more. You'll dream bigger. You'll love again, this time with balance, not desperation. With standards, not fear. With openness, not attachment. And if fate ever lets your paths cross again, you'll thank her silently, not for staying, but for leaving. because her absence was the birthplace of your strength. She'll miss you, yes, but you won't need to be missed, because you've already found everything she once made you forget. There comes a day when you wake up and realize the storm is gone. Not because it suddenly cleared, but because you finally stopped standing in the rain. You look back at everything: the love, the pain, the silence, the rebuilding, and it all starts to make sense. Every unanswered message, every sleepless night, every tear that fell quietly into the dark, it was teaching you something. It was carving you into someone steadier, someone wiser. The lesson wasn't about how to win her back. It was about how to never lose yourself again. You learned that peace doesn't come from people staying. It comes from knowing you'll still be whole if they leave. It's the kind of peace that can't be taken, because it lives inside you now. You realize that heartbreak wasn't your punishment. It was your awakening. It stripped you down to truth, showed you what parts of yourself were built on fear, and forced you to rebuild from honesty instead. You stop blaming her. You stop blaming yourself. You stop trying to label it right or wrong. Because some stories aren't meant to last. They're meant to start you. And when you finally accept that, forgiveness finds you. Not the loud kind, not a dramatic declaration, just a quiet release in your chest. You exhale the weight you've been carrying. You remember her with clarity, not craving. You thank her silently for the role she played, because if she hadn't walked away, you never would have walked inward. The man you are now doesn't seek closure. He creates it. He doesn't beg to be chosen. He chooses himself. He doesn't build his identity around being loved. He builds it around being real. And that's the hardest truth to learn. Real love begins after the heartbreak, because that's when you finally love without fear. That's when you understand that love isn't possession, it's presence. You stop performing. You stop chasing approval. You learn to stand alone, not as an act of pride, but as an act of peace. You fill your time with purpose. You build habits that nourish your mind and body. You rediscover what fulfillment feels like when it's not tied to someone else. And when you do meet someone again, you'll recognize the difference instantly. You'll know how to give without losing yourself. You'll know how to love without surrendering your boundaries. You'll know how to walk away when respect disappears. That's the quiet power heartbreak gives a man. Clarity. Because now you understand that what left you didn't destroy you. It revealed you. The lesson is simple, but it changes everything. You don't chase love. You become love. You don't demand loyalty. You embody it. You don't wait for validation. You move with conviction. And from that space, life begins to meet you differently. Opportunities feel natural. Friendships deepen. Peace becomes your default, not your reward. You stop needing to prove anything, because your presence already speaks louder than your words ever could. People start to feel it too, that quiet strength. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. You've learned that silence is a language, discipline is love, and peace is the loudest flex there is. Sometimes you'll still think of her, not with longing, but with gratitude, because she was the mirror that showed you what still needed healing. She was the chapter that ended, so you could finally write the one you were meant to live. You see now that she'll miss you was never the goal. It was just the consequence of your growth, because people always notice peace, especially when they were once the reason you didn't have it. So you keep walking, not forward out of spite, but forward out of faith. Faith that life is still unfolding in your favor. Faith that every loss you've endured has refined you, not ruined you. And when you stand in front of the mirror now, you see it clearly. The eyes that no longer plead, the posture that no longer bends, the calm that can't be shaken. This is you, whole, steady, real. You became the man she couldn't meet because you stopped needing to be met halfway. You built yourself from silence and from scars, from the fire she left behind. And in doing so, you discovered that the greatest revenge isn't being missed. It's being fulfilled. That's the lesson. That's the point of it all. To lose, to break, to rebuild, and to realize you never truly lost anything that was meant for you. So when people ask how you moved on, you'll just smile and say, I didn't move on. I moved up. Because that's what men do when they finally understand. Some endings aren't tragedies. They're invitations. Invitations to rise, to evolve, to become. And that's the real story. Not that she'll miss you, but that you'll never again forget who you are. And in the end, it wasn't about her. It was about you. About the man you became when love left. The silence you learned to sit in. The strength you found in your own reflection. You learned that real love doesn't leave. It evolves. It begins within you. She may remember the man you were, but the world will meet the man you've become. A man who no longer chases validation, who moves with peace instead of pride, who builds not from pain, but from purpose. Because when you finally become that man, you realize the story was never about who walked away. It was always about who stayed, you. So don't wish for her to miss you. Just keep becoming the kind of man no one forgets.